Hello and welcome to this episode of the Home and Energy Chats. My name is Heather Chandler and I am the owner and publisher of the Green and Healthy Maine Homes magazines. Every episode, we bring together industry experts to help you learn about building healthy, efficient, and sustainable homes. And today we're going to be exploring various types of home energy evaluations, what each involves, and how they can help you make informed decisions to improve your home's efficiency. A home energy evaluation can be key to cutting down energy bills, improving comfort, and reducing your home's heat loss. We're also going to be exploring the U.S. Department of Energy's new Home Energy Score, a valuable new tool for both homeowners and home buyers. So I would like to start by saying a very special thank you to our season sponsor, Royal River Heat Pumps, a locally owned and operated company that is nationally recognized for heat pump excellence and is 100% committed to the highest standards of quality installations, service practices, and customer satisfaction. You can find them online at royalriverheatpumps.com. And now a little bit about us. Green and Healthy Maine Homes is dedicated to inspiring healthy, efficient, and future-ready homes. In addition to these chats, we also publish the Green and Healthy Maine Homes magazines. You can see some of the past covers here. We maintain the Green Homes Business Directory on our website, greenmainehomes.com, where you can find Maine home professionals specializing in healthy and energy-efficient homes. And I hope you will mark your calendars to join us April 6th in South Portland for this year's Green Home and Energy Show. This is a great place to find resources for every step of your home journey, from building to buying to renovating. We will have over 70 exhibitors. I think we're up to 15 plus workshops already, an electric vehicle expo, and a sustainable landscaping expo, plus some tasty food trucks. So tickets are now available at greenmainehomes.com. And if you get them in advance, you can save a bit. So check that out. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Claire Betze is the owner of BuildingWorks, a residential energy consulting firm specializing in a holistic and integrative approach to improving the performance of existing and new construction projects and their mechanical systems. Claire is a licensed professional engineer in Maine. She is a ResNet HERS rater, which I will let her explain to you what that is, and a BPI building analyst. She is also a registered Maine guide, and when she's not working, you can find her outside enjoying the natural beauty of Maine. So welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Heather. It's great to be here.
And next up, we have Colin McCullough. Colin is the owner of All Around Home Performance. He previously worked as a home energy auditor for the Mass Save program and as the senior technical field representative for Efficiency Maine's Quality Assurance program. Colin is a certified energy auditor from the Building Performance Institute, BPI, and is a trainer and proctor for BPI certification in Maine. And he also teaches building science courses at SMCC and KVCC. Putting his energy efficiency to work, he has been renovating his 1915 home in Farmingdale to become a high-performance net zero energy home. Welcome, Colin.
Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you both with us today. So Claire, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off. If you could tell us a little bit about the different types of energy audits, energy evaluations, and why we should consider getting one in the first place.
Thanks, Heather. It's great to be here with you and Colin and to be part of the good work that you're doing here with these home energy chats. I'm going to start us off and get into the types of home energy audits. And the way I think that we need to look at it is, ideally, we all want our homes to be comfortable. We want them to be durable. We want them to be healthy and efficient. And it really doesn't matter whether it's a 200-year-old house or whether it's a house that was built in the last 10 years. I would offer that a home energy audit could help you kind of achieve and improve on all of those things. And I think we'll dig into the details a little bit more about the how of it, but I think that it's important to recognize that each house can be improved, and it doesn't really matter about the age at all. So I'm going to go into the types of audits, and there's a wide spectrum, and it can range from a simple approach to an energy consult, which is really just a site visit and walkthrough that takes 1 to 2 hours, to something that's much more comprehensive and a much more deeper dive, into the details of how we're really looking at your home. And then there's everything in between. And we're going to talk more about the elements of these audits, but that kind of gives you a wide range, a 1 to 2 hour discussion only with no testing, and then a much more comprehensive, deeper dive into how your home operates. There's also the question of whether or not you should have that audit conducted by an independent energy auditor like Colin or myself, where we're really not doing any of the work, any of the improvement work that we're recommending. We're really just assessing your home and giving you prioritized recommendations. There's another business model of an all-in-one approach, and that essentially is a firm that has someone come in and do an energy assessment of your house and gives you a proposal or an estimate, and then goes on to complete the work. Each has their own advantages and disadvantages. The all-in-one kind of gives you a more streamlined approach to it, where you're not dealing with multiple companies or things like that. But I would say that really the basic reason why you would want an energy audit would inform what the better fit is for you in terms of who should conduct that audit. So the types of energy audits that I provide as part of BuildingWorks is an energy consult. Not all energy auditors do this kind of work, but I see it as a chance for homeowners to ask questions, to provide guidance to them. As I said, it's a site visit, 1 to 2 hours. We're really kind of talking about the issues that you want to talk about as a homeowner, and really kind of getting to, are there any issues like ice dams or comfort issues? Is there anything you really want to focus on? And then we do a walkthrough, and that involves the exterior around the house, and it also involves the interior from the basement to the attic. And we're discussing things along the way. I'm talking about what I'm seeing or what I'm not seeing. And as the homeowner, you have the opportunity to ask questions about any and all of that. There's no testing that's done, and there's no written report at all. Then we go from that to the type of service that I actually provide a great deal of, which is more comprehensive, and it is more of an evaluation. And that's a much deeper dive into all the details of your house. And it's usually done as part of a larger project or a large renovation project, where the homeowner is really thinking long term. I think of the more comprehensive approach as a mini master plan, so that you can basically phase the improvements that you want to make to your home over time and keep moving forward without feeling like you have to look over your back and are worried about having to go backwards. So that really kind of gives you an opportunity to phase things, or to do it all in one swoop as part of a larger renovation project. But you're doing the testing, you're getting into more of the details associated with it, and you're providing a written report that prioritizes the energy improvements. And oftentimes I'm developing an approach for replacement of existing heating and cooling systems, ventilation systems, those types of things. And then there's a follow-up meeting to talk about it. Regardless of whether I'm doing a consult or whether I'm doing a more comprehensive energy evaluation, I'm looking at the house as a system. It's a holistic approach that recognizes that the different systems in the house, moisture and ventilation, air infiltration, insulation, heating and cooling, and combustion safety, they all work together. And when you make a change in one area, you have to recognize that other areas could be affected, and that you can create some unintended consequences. there's a graphic that I'm showing that's from the Department of Energy, and it's basically showing how homes behave, our home in the winter months, where the warmer air, which is more buoyant, it's kind of gathering at the ceiling level or at the lid of your home, and it wants to find its way out because hot always wants to go to cold. As it does that, it fills in, that colder air fills in from the bottom. So our approach is really to try to tighten that up and air seal it, so that we're plugging those holes, so that we're holding more of that warmer air in, and then align the insulation with it. And so you can think of it as kind of a, when you walk outside on a cold, windy day and you just have a fleece or a sweater on, then you're still going to be cold because the wind is still blowing right through your home. And so, but if you put a Gore-Tex jacket on over that, then you're really kind of going to be much warmer on a cold, windy day. And that's how air sealing and insulation work together to be the most effective. So if we're concentrating on that for your home, we want to recognize that if we're tightening it up, we also have an ability to change how your heating and cooling system might work. If you have an older boiler or furnace and it's using makeup air from inside your home, we want to make sure that we've addressed that with combustion safety testing, and so that we're not potentially pulling and backdrafting those exhaust gases down your chimney and causing health and safety issues. So that's how an understanding of a house as a system works. If you affect one of these systems, you have to acknowledge that you could be affecting others and make sure that you're creating basically a safe home for the occupants. So the first thing that we do before we do the site condition survey is that discussion with the homeowner. Why are we there? And the reasons vary quite a bit, but that in my mind is a critical thing for an auditor, is just to listen about what the homeowner has to say about any concerns, any complaints, any future plans. And from there, we're going to the outside of the house and we're doing a site condition survey. We're looking at drainage, how the ground slopes, whether it slopes back toward the house or it slopes away. What's happening with the water that's being managed from the roof? Is there a gutter system? And if there is it in good condition and maintained regularly? Are there ice dams, which we can see a ton of actually in the last few weeks because we've had so much snow? But we're really looking at the outside of the house. Are there exterior vents? That way we know that the bath fans are there and they're exhausting to the outside. Range hoods are exhausting to the outside. And are there other opportunities? How is your house oriented? Is there an opportunity to provide solar panels? From there, we're going inside to the house and we're going down into the basement and the crawl space. And those are not areas where we spend a lot of time in as a homeowner, but it's the areas where auditors spend a ton of time. It's usually where we find moisture issues, whether it's bulk moisture from a dirt floor in an older house, or whether it's water leaking in a small location or overall during a rainstorm. There are a lot of opportunities and a lot of things that we're looking at. One big opportunity is when a basement has a bulkhead access, which is to the outside. And many times you find that they might have the steel doors that let you in, but when you get down to the bottom of the stair, there's no door there. And that's a big hole in the building envelope and a huge opportunity to tighten it up. And then we're recognizing that the things in our basements and our crawl spaces really do impact our living space and indoor air quality. So we want to clean them up and make them dry as one of our first priorities. From there, we're going through the living space of the house and still looking at things, but we really want to spend a lot of time in the attic as well. We're looking for potential safety issues like older houses that have knob and tube wiring that might still be intact. We're looking at the types of insulation, and again, older houses sometimes can still have older types of insulation in them, like vermiculite that contains asbestos, and that would basically make sure that we know that it's there, so we're not going to produce or do a blower door test. We're looking at how much insulation is there, where is it located, and what type is it. We're also looking for big holes because big holes are big areas of heat loss. That's where most of that air is really going out of your house. And older houses sometimes have huge holes in them, and all houses actually do. So air sealing and opportunities are also critical, especially in the attic. We're looking at where the bath fans vent. Do they vent to the outside or do they vent into the attic? And we don't want them to vent into the attic because that's a huge moisture concern. What's happening at the roof line, particularly in older houses? Take a look at the chimneys, take a look at the roof sheathing, because all that moisture that's down in the basement and in the crawl spaces always ends up in the attic. From there, we're doing blower door testing, which is essentially a large fan in a centrally located door, and we're measuring how leaky or how tight your house is. So we're pulling the air out of the house and we're pulling outside air in most often, and we're measuring that airflow. Another important tool that goes hand in hand with blower door testing is thermal imaging using an infrared camera. And that really creates a picture that we can share with the homeowner that is much better than me waving my arms around. So these infrared cameras really can tell you where cold surfaces are, where warm surfaces are, and many times you can actually see the streaking that occurs from air leaks. The photo that I'm showing now is really showing a great room, a high wall in a great room with pine V-match ceilings and walls, and there is an attic that's vented to the outside on the other side of it. So you can see a lot of cold surfaces and a lot of air leakage in that thermal image. We're also looking at the mechanical systems and how old are they? What kind of fuel do they use? And what kind of condition is it in? Where does it get its makeup air if it uses fossil fuels? And we're looking at the delivery systems that it might use if it's a boiler that uses hot water baseboard, for instance. Are there opportunities to insulate that as well? And as we do that, we're also looking for opportunities for new mechanical systems, whether we can switch over to an all-electric approach using heat pumps, which are often talked about and have been on your show, Heather, quite a bit. And those range from ductless mini splits to a ducted system. And then there are other opportunities in terms of ground source heat pumps and other things as well. There's also heat pump water heaters, which are much more efficient than a standard electric water heater. Then we're also looking at ventilation, because as we have recommended improvements to make the house tighter, we are reducing the amount of natural air leakage that occurs between the inside and outside. So we have to still have that air exchange, and we want to control it so that we still ensure our indoor air quality and that air exchange between outside and inside, but we don't want it to be uncontrolled like it was before we tightened up the house. There are different ways of doing it. It can be as simple as using a high quality bath fan, or it could be ideally something like an ERV or an energy recovery ventilator that's balanced, that offers the same amount of fresh air that it exhausts directly to the outside. Lastly, I think we're really doing a test in and a test out, and that involves blower door testing, combustion safety testing, ventilation testing, and then recommending a radon test. Maine is a high area of radon, and as we have done all this work to help tighten up the house, we want to make sure that the indoor air quality is healthy. And so when we test in and we test out, we assure that we're not doing any harm, and we're leaving you with a safe, healthy, and durable home that will last and be greatly improved.
Thank you, Claire. That was super helpful and a really nice overview too of some very important building science basics. So thank you for that. The Department of Energy, we mentioned, recently introduced a new metric called the Home Energy Score. And Colin, I think you're going to walk us through an introduction to it and how it differs from an energy audit.
Yes. Yeah, so just to clarify, the Department of Energy came out with the Home Energy Score program in 2012, so it's been around for a while, but it's kind of taking a while to get caught on in different states and different cities. And so basically, the Home Energy Score is it's like a miles per gallon rating, but for your house. So it's really meant to be a fairly simple energy assessment without going through the whole process of doing a full energy audit with all the testing. It's really meant to be just kind of a quicker energy assessment. And a lot of times in a lot of cities in other states, like in Oregon, it's used quite a bit. The other, Portland, uses it a lot. So basically, they use it for all home sales so that when you are in the market to purchase a home, then you get to use the home energy score to basically kind of compare one house to the other in terms of energy intensity, how much energy does it take to operate and heat that house. So it's a great way to be able to do that. So back last year, the Maine legislature passed a bill, LD 1101, to help promote the home energy score in program in the state of Maine. And so at this point, uh, Efficiency Maine has chosen a national partner, which is Earth Advantage, to sort of administrate that program here in Maine. And so for the time being, we're basically they're trying to explore which cities and towns might be interested in having this be part of the home sale process. So there are some cities who are interested in making that mandatory for all home sales. And then also for some of the community energy coach programs and possibly some of the indigenous communities using this sort of a scoring tool for the community volunteers that can go to different houses and do the home energy score, just to kind of give that simple energy assessment. So we can see on the screen here, here's an example of a home energy score. Um, so it's a 1 out of 10, 1 to 10 rating. So the 10 being the most energy efficient. And it's basically comparing a specific house to other houses in the area in terms of their energy usage. Um, so there are a number of inputs that you use for that, but again, it's a score from 1 to 10. So especially in home sales, if you can see that, hey, there's a house with a 5 versus a house that's a 7, the house that's a 7 is going to be using a lot less energy to heat and power the home. Another thing that the home energy score does is you can see on the screen it's a score of 8 here. But if there are some recommended insulation and air sealing recommended, improving the mechanical systems, maybe switch over to heat pumps, something like that, then you can bring your score from an 8 to a 10. So it gives you a snapshot of where the house is right now and then where it could be with some recommended improvements. So what I did here for the presentation today is I took a house that I did an energy audit a full energy audit, and I also did a home energy score rating for that house so that I could have both reports so I could show you an example of what a home energy score report looks like versus what a full energy audit report looks like that I normally put together. So if you want to scroll down, you can see some of the inputs on the home energy score. You're basically creating putting in the inputs about the size of the house, the age, what the zip code is. You're putting in insulation levels, information about the heating system and the fuel that's used in the home. So there's all of the house information that goes in. And I know people who do this in other states where they basically just walk in with an iPad. They will use the home energy score tool on the iPad and it will create the score and the report. And they've already emailed it before they've even left the house. So miracles of modern technology, right? So that is an example of what the home energy score report looks like. Based on the age of the house and the insulation levels, If there's, for say, 6 inches of insulation in the attic, it's definitely going to make a recommendation to air seal the attic and blow in a lot more insulation. And it gives you an idea about how much you would save each year in energy savings from doing those upgrades. So that's an example of the home energy score. And again, just to sort of show, a difference between one and the other, this is a sample energy audit report for that same house. So this is a ranch house in Eastport that I did an audit for. And you can see here the key takeaways and suggestions. I start my energy audit reports with a whole bullet list of different recommendations. So just like Claire was talking about, looking at the insulation, looking at the heating system, documenting the mechanical systems in the house, checking the moisture, the humidity, looking at all of these concerns, take a walk around the outside of the house and get a lot of pictures. So I don't, in the reports that I don't really do copying and pasting. It's really, every house is really specific. So I really customize each house with photos from each house. I don't use like stock photos or anything like that. Just to be able to point to, hey, here's an issue, and this is exactly where you see that in the house. So that's the type of report that I like to do. So around the outside, looking in the inside, looking at the mechanical systems, the testing that Claire was talking about with the blower door and infrared pictures, that is it's definitely my favorite part of the audit. It's where I get to really get homeowners to be involved. So I usually will bring a few infrared cameras with me. And with the blower door running, then we'll go around together, give the other infrared camera to the homeowner, and they can see. So they can see for themselves where the air is coming in from, where the air leaks are. With the blower door running, it's great to be able to like stand underneath a recessed light fixture and just kind of put your hand up and feel how much air is coming into that house through the recessed lights, through pull down stairs and attic hatches and things like that. Then you can really feel quite a bit of air coming in through there. So it's one thing for me to just kind of talk about it, but for a homeowner to be able to actually experience that with the blower door test running and the infrared camera, then I love to be able to get them involved and be able to explain, what's actually happening in the house.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and transition to some viewer Q&A. So Colin, I'm going to start with a question for you. This one came in during our registration process. Several listeners asked about availability of rebates and incentives from Efficiency Maine and the government for helping with an energy audit. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yep. So there's no rebate from Efficiency Maine for energy audits. There was years ago, but what they found was that a lot of people, if they got a free energy audit with the rebate, then that audit report would just end up like in the kitchen drawer for homeowners. Like they would get the audit and get the report, and then they wouldn't actually do anything beyond that, do any of the insulation recommendations or anything. So they stopped providing that rebate, and they put that money instead to doing the actual work, doing the insulation and air sealing and heat pumps and things like that. So, that's, for me, that's a really important part of doing an audit, is to make sure that the report is easy for people to understand and leads to action, right? So it's really, there's no value in the report if I spend 4 hours writing the report and somebody puts it in the kitchen drawer. I want them to take action with it. So so I understand why Efficiency Maine decided not to continue with the rebate for that. There is a 30% federal tax credit right now for that covers energy audits.
Great, thank you. Claire, I'm going to bounce this one to you. Realizing that every house presents its own set of conditions in terms of size, age, condition, layout, insulation, etc. Can you give viewers an idea of the cost of these various types of evaluations that you mentioned, like from the consult to the, I think you called it the comprehensive energy audit or evaluation?
There's a pretty wide range, and I think that the consult could be, as little as, 100, 100 to $200 to basically, and it's, a couple of hours really of discussion time. And then the comprehensive, more detailed energy evaluation really depends a lot on the age of the house, the complexity of it, and really what the focus of the audit needs to be. And there's just a huge range of what that represents there. And much of it depends on the owner's reasons for wanting to do it, what else is going to happen in terms of a large renovation or project, associated with it, and then the complexity of the house. That would be much more than an energy consult, which is why I kind of got into doing the consults to begin with, because that gives people information as to whether or not they need to go any further or not. And not every house needs a comprehensive, more detailed approach. And sometimes there's everything in between, with that. So I think Colin's point is well taken about, I think, as we do this type of work, the success is really in the homeowners using the recommendations. And I found that a follow-up meeting is really helpful, and so that they can ask questions, and they might not want to flip through the report. And Colin's example of putting the key takeaways on the first page is awesome, or telling them where it is, and you can flip right to the back if you want to. It's really important. So cost range is quite a bit. It's hard for me to tell you about what the cost of a detailed evaluation is without understanding more about the house.
Yeah, it's nice that they are so customized to whatever the particular questions or concerns the homeowner has. That's great. Deb would like to know, and I'm going to put this out to either of you. Deb would like to know if you recommend a hierarchy on which projects to tackle first for the best bang for the buck. Like, do you have a sort of a general recommendation on where people should start if there's a whole list of recommendations?
Claire, you want to take this first?
I think we both can.
Okay.
I think that for me, I really encourage folks to, if I find any health and safety kind of concerns or items, that's really, I don't usually leave the site visit without telling them about that and basically saying, you might want to really go ahead and address this before we do any more work. The hierarchy in terms of the biggest bang for the buck with air sealing and insulation is, usually, you tackle the lid first, because that's where the warmer air is always gathering. But so that would be your initial priority. But I'm also going to say that don't do it without looking at moisture and ventilation issues first. If you have a wet basement or a crawl space that has a dirt floor, you really don't want to do anything but tackle that initially. And that's hard because that's never an easy task, or not usually anyway. But before you go to the lid, where you do get your biggest bang for your buck, you really have to address those moisture issues, bulk moisture, which usually starts in the basement in the crawl spaces. And just an interesting story is I learned this the hard way. I have one of those older mid 1800s homes, and I was so excited about really doing this work. I wasn't an auditor yet, but I worked with a colleague who was, and also he started an insulation company. And we approached our lid first. That was the biggest bang for the buck that we were going to have. And I was going to follow right down to the basement because I have one of those wet basements. And, a few years went by and I still hadn't gotten to the basement despite my best intentions. And so the moisture came back to bite me, and I had to rip it all out and really address what those consequences were. So I'm pretty adamant about addressing that moisture first
Yeah.
before you do anything.
Super helpful tip. Anything to add to that, Colin?
Sure. Well, as we were scanning through the audit report that I did from Eastport, you'd see that I didn't rank things in that bullet point list. I don't have like good, better, best or color rating or anything. Homeowners will sometimes ask me to do that, and I'll say it's sort of like asking which is my favorite child. You know, it's that's not a fair question, right? So I put it in the list of recommendations because I want you to do it. I'm recommending for you to do it. So I don't really rank things that way in the report, and also I don't get too much into uh, giving cost savings. I don't focus super on cost savings because comfort and health and durability, like Claire was showing in her slideshow, those are all really important parts of it. And of course, if you're going to do insulation and heat pumps, you want to see some savings, some payback. So we talk about that. But people get really fixated on just the simple payback for things where comfort is such a important issue in the house. So that's one thing. But when I write the audit report, when I email it to the homeowner, I will make the recommendation of um, here are the things that I recommend that you start with. This is going to be obviously addressing the insulation in the attic, like Claire was saying. If there are moisture issues to take care of, do that first. All of that information is in the report, but I do like to try and summarize that when I send the report to the homeowner and make some recommendations for that.
Great. I appreciate your comment, Claire, about, the basement it's not the most fun thing to address first, and we don't see it, so it's really easy to ignore it, but sometimes those are the most important things. So very helpful to hear that perspective. So there's a question from Grace about how do you find energy auditors in your area? And I assume that we'll start with the Efficiency Maine vendor database is the best place in Maine. If you're outside of Maine, I imagine there's an efficiency organization similar. But do you have anything to add to that?
Most of the time, people find me on the Efficiency Maine vendor locator. And then a lot of times it's referrals from contractors, from different contractors, insulation or heat pump installers. Um, when I worked in when I worked in Massachusetts at Mass Save, then it was free. The energy audit was free, and you could get one every calendar year. So in Massachusetts, like everybody knows that if you're uncomfortable in your house or you have high heating bills, then you call for a free energy audit. But since we don't have, it's a very different state program that we have here. But since we don't have that, then you have to. A lot of times, people find out about energy audits from an insulation contractor or a heat pump installer. Maybe their heat pump installer is putting the line sets through the walls, and they drill the holes into the wall, and they say, "Hey, there's no insulation in this wall. You should probably get that taken care of." So I get a lot of my referrals that way.
Yeah, that's a good point, Colin. I think that, I get some referrals from, heating contractors, where they're asked to come in and take a look at, maybe replacing an existing heating system, but they're looking around and seeing, pretty lightly insulated home. And so they might provide my name or something like that. And I think word of mouth here in Maine means a lot. So if you have, if you talk to your neighbors and folks and about getting one other than the resources of Efficiency Maine and things like that, then there's also a lot of power with that to connect with someone who knows someone else.
And we should add too that Efficiency Maine vendor database that you can look up based on not only your area, but also how many audits they've done. So you can kind of see who has more experience too. So it's a really helpful resource. So Julia is asking, how should you estimate the amount of money on an electric bill that is used by heat pumps as the whole house heating? Anyone have a suggestion on that? It's a little tricky to measure unless you have a good before and after, right?
Yeah, it's possible if you look at the electric bill. Usually, there's a 12-month history at least with CMP. There's a lot of times there's a 3-year history. So you can look at the past 12 months and sort of disaggregate where your heating and cooling costs are. If you look at the shoulder seasons where you're not really heating or cooling, you can kind of look at that as the base load, and you can help to an extent. You can help to sort of figure out how much of that increased electric bill is from heat pumps.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You can, a lot of times it's that April, May kind of area, and that amount of basically if you have heat pumps and that's your only way of heating and cooling, that will give you what your base load is. And then if you plotted that, I'm a geek and that's showing right now, but if you plotted that, then anything, above would give you kind of your heating and cooling use. It's not an exact thing, but it gives you a rough idea.
I'm also a fan of the whole house energy monitors, like the Sense monitor or some even smart electric panels that are being installed now, where it just talks to the app on your phone. And like for example, I have the Sense monitor on my phone, and so if anybody asks me how much electricity my heat pump is using, I can tell you exactly what it is today, what it was last week, last month, last year. So if you really want to get that level of detail, then you can get a whole house energy monitor, and that will tell you exactly.
Can that attach to an existing panel, or do you have to change your panel?
Uh, a Sense monitor attaches to the existing panel, costs several $100s. And so if you love to geek out about this stuff, then it's a great resource. Or you can get replace the panel with a smart panel. There are different ones on the market that give you even more information.
Thanks. I had not heard of that. That's a great resource. Claire, you talked a little bit about the importance of dealing with the moisture in your basement. And so Paul is asking if you could talk about humidity recommendations and the use of dehumidifiers in basements.
Yeah, I think they're really an important kind of way to manage moisture. Really, if you think about where to insulate, although it's not where you get your biggest bang for your buck, your foundation walls in your basement really is where the pressure boundary is and where you would want insulation to go. It needs to be, a a type of insulation that isn't susceptible to moisture and water. But what that does when you're able to insulate is it reduces the amount of concrete that's exposed. And those in the summer months, especially, kind of, are condensing surfaces. Think about taking a glass of iced tea outside in the summer months, and the moisture builds up on the outside of the glass. And so that helps reduce moisture in your basement. And then I find that even though I've done that in my house, I still have a dehumidifier. It's an Energy Star rated dehumidifier because they use less energy. And it adds to your electric bill, but I set it at around 45 to 50% so that it only comes on when it needs to. And it's automatic draining to my sump. And so if it needs to come on, it will. And there are times during the summer months that it does come on, even though I've reduced the amount of exposed concrete in my basement as much as I possibly can with vapor barriers and insulation. But I think the important thing to think about is with a dehumidifier is to make sure it's Energy Star rated, because it's going to add to your electric bill, but it'll add much less if it's an Energy Star label on it, and make sure that it can drain directly to something, so you don't have to empty out that bucket all the time, because that can be a little bit of a annoying, really.
And is there a percentage range that either of you would recommend for indoor, like our home environments and inside the house? Where should our humidity range be?
I think it's really between, I think the graphics would tell you between 40 and 60%. I like to keep it 50% or below. And one thing that is kind of something to think about as well is during the winter months, if you are seeing condensation consistently on your windows, on the glass of your windows, that's kind of telling you that you need more air exchange and you might need that mechanical ventilation. It might tell you that you have leaky windows, especially if they're double hung windows. But I think if you're consistently seeing that moisture build up on your windows, then that's telling you that you need some moisture management. There, and you need to pay attention to that.
I have an old house and was getting some moisture at various times throughout the year, and so I was able to buy some little humidity you know, um, testers that I just have in various rooms of the house for I think $20 to $30 each, and they've been super helpful to learn about humidity in the house and how it varies. Certainly spikes after a shower and things like that. So I'd throw in a recommendation for those as well. Okay, so moving on, Abby is experiencing cold coming in through her 20-plus-year-old window panes. She wants to know if this means that the windows need replacing.
This is where the window salespeople hate me because I generally don't put in my reports to replace windows unless they're old single pane windows, double hung, super drafty, anything like that. But outside of that, I'm a big fan of the interior window inserts. So like what the Window Dressers program makes. There's some really great videos on YouTube of how to make your own interior window inserts. Those are really effective at stopping a lot of the cold air from coming through the window. But then also just as important is the air that can come in through the rough opening where the windows are installed. That's all covered up with interior window trim, but especially if you use a blower door test and an infrared camera, a lot of times, even with newer windows, you can see that the air is still coming in through those rough openings. So, using silicone caulking and air sealing that, or removing the trim and using low expanding foam in the rough openings. There's a lot that you can do before you have to spend the money to replace it.
Yeah. Another plug for another manufacturer of the inserts is Interglass. So if you don't want to make your own, they'll come and measure, and you can buy them from them. So Deb is wondering, so keeping with the window theme, about the value of covering windows at night. So maybe those old quilts that we used to use back in the day.
Yeah, I would say that those old window quilts, or and also the cellular shades are really helpful in terms of helping cover windows. You have to manage them, most of the time, so that you're not building up moisture, because of the lack of airspace. But they're really helpful, to helping on those cold winter nights. They can also help you in the summertime too, so that you're not, getting the solar gain from the windows, like you might, depending on how your windows are facing. But yeah, I'm a big fan of quilted shades or the cellular ones.
Looks like we have one more question. Alan has a question about insulation. He is asking what alternatives there are for, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, isocyanate foams for chemically sensitive people who constitute, he says, 10 to 20% of the population. So what are some alternatives to foam insulations?
So you have the polyiso. I know it's a mouthful. Polyisocyanurate. Um, so you have the polyiso foam boards that have the radiant barrier, the foil facing on them, but you can also get the EPS or XPS foam board. So like if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, the pink board, blue board, purple board, different colors that they have. Uh, those don't, I believe those don't off gas at the same amount that the polyiso boards would. So
So the EPS boards.
yeah, yeah. Or another alternative coming down the pike, hopefully, we have the Timber HP. They're going to be using wood fiber to make compressed insulation boards that could be used on the outside of the house as well, like to skin the outside of the house. And then also you have compressed rock wool boards as well. So they make a bat material, but then you can also get the compressed board version as well. So yeah, there's some alternatives.
And definitely, depending on where in the house, the dense pack cellulose is a good alternative to foams as well, right?
Mhm. I would just add that, if you're in a basement, it becomes quite difficult just because of
Yeah.
the moisture consideration. But there are ways that you can use, a minimal amount of foam products, but then basically isolate it so that it is not part of the living state space and kind of seal it out by building a wall, in front of it. But then you use that foam to basically insulate the foundation, and then you add additional insulation with a framed wall that allows you to keep it to the outside and not part of your living space if you need to use it. I think that's a challenge with many older homes, is that there's not a lot of alternatives on like a rubble wall foundation. You can't really even use a foam board there. You have to go to spray foam, and that becomes quite a challenge if you're the occupants of chemical sensitivities, for sure.
Thank you both for all of your, oh, it looks like one more question came in. Let me just double check this. Are the foam alternatives full of microplastics?
The foam is plastic, so I would say as it breaks down, probably would be. That's just a guess, but all different foam products are essentially plastic.
Or they're petroleum based too. There's been quite a bit of effort to really reduce the amount of foam insulation products that we're using. Colin mentioned the timber board that hopefully will come out soon. Mineral wool, there's a formaldehyde free mineral wool that you can use as well, but you really have to be careful about where you're using them. But the microplastics is hard to avoid when you're using a rigid foam product.
Thank you both. We have come almost to the end of the session, and I really appreciate you both being here with us today. And it really did, in addition to being an overview of energy evaluations, it also turned into a little overview of building science basics. So I appreciate that. Um, Thank you again to our sponsor, Royal River Heat Pumps, and to our webinar producer, Rain Rayner, who handles everything so beautifully behind the scenes. You can learn about future Home and Energy Chat episodes and catch up on recordings from all of our past episodes on our website, greenmainhomes.com.